Hello my wonderful, beautiful friends. Guys, welcome back to r/EntitledPeople, where people seem to think that they deserve everything and that they're better than everyone else. And in this episode, guys, crazy Karens are at it again. OP tells a tale where an elderly Karen tries to wrestle OP out of her wheelchair because Karen needs it more. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's super entitled stories. Hit subscribe if you haven't. And as always, you can send your stories to this email right here. Oh, and try not to shake your heads too hard today. So I'm a single mom in my 50s with one daughter. I got very lucky in that I bought a home in the Bay Area nearly 30 years ago for around $230,000 before the tech boom. And now the house is worth about $1 million. I have a 23-year-old daughter named Camila who grew up in that house, and she moved out last year to go live with her boyfriend. Now, I've never explicitly told my daughter that the house will be yours, nor has she ever asked anything about it. But it's sort of common sense. That's my daughter, and who else would I give it to? My fiancé Steven and I have been together for 2 years. He has 2 young children that he has joint custody of, who I adore, and I'm excited to help raise them. Now, Steven and I don't have a ton in the bank, so a prenup seems silly if it weren't for the house. I told him that I'm ready to combine finances and plan long-term with him, but that I wanted a prenup agreement just for the house. It's a non-negotiable for me that my daughter inherits the house. He wasn't very happy with this. He said that $1 million split 3 ways is enough for all 3 kids to get a head start in life. I disagree. I paid 80% of the mortgage by myself, and Camila is my only child. She can have her dream life working as a hairstylist while living in the Bay Area with this house, but she'll be unhappy and have to move out to a less desirable area if it's split. I spoke to Camila about this, and she agrees that she should get the house, and she had always planned on inheriting it, just like I had always planned on giving it to her. My soon-to-be husband is mad at me for this, so am I the a-hole? Yeah, so I don't think OP is the a-hole in this one, and she for sure needs to lawyer up. Like, in my honest opinion, I'd be very wary of this man if I were OP. Like, it's understandable that when you marry someone with kids, you'd ideally want all of them to be treated equally, right? But like OP said, she's paid 80% of the house off already that she bought 30 years ago. Way before knowing this man. And despite only knowing him for 2 years, he wants his kids to get a majority of the home. So to put this in perspective, his 2 kids will end up getting 67% of the house, while OP's own daughter will only inherit 33%. That doesn't seem very fair to me, guys. If I were OP, I'd definitely talk it out and clear it up before officially tying the knot. Like, what do you guys think? Is OP the a-hole? Is she not the a-hole? Or does everyone suck here? And just to tell you, a lot of people in the comments are saying that OP should reconsider this man because apparently all he sees is dollar signs, so yeah. I'm a 23-year-old female, and I was 22 at the time. So a non-traditional student joined my organization who was probably in her 50s, and gave me a ride to an event because I can't drive. So we get to talking, and she talked about how broke she and her high school-aged daughter were. So on the way back, being a nice person, I bought them $100 worth of groceries. I was happy to do it. The next day, she messages me with a huge favor. I tell her, maybe. She asked me for $500 for her and her daughter's rent, and she told me that they'd be living in a car if I didn't pay it. Now, the thing is, I'm not rich. I wouldn't be able to afford my own rent if I paid theirs plus the groceries. I'm financially stable, but I'm not rich at all. I ended up giving her $200 out of guilt, and I said that's all I could give her. 2 days later, I was in the hospital for an emergency procedure, and she spams me with messages asking for $89. Literally dozens of messages. I told her I was on the operating table and that's why I couldn't respond, and that I don't have the money. And she kept asking. I finally told her that she should ask someone else because I just couldn't do it. The thing is, she never once asked if I was okay, nor did she ever reply to my text to pay me back. I'm a 23-year-old college student. I make an okay living on disability, plus a part-time job, and I'm supporting myself, not this lady and her daughter. I can't even drive, so I Uber to work. And this woman does not work because her and her daughter only have 1 car, and her daughter uses it most of the time. I had to get the president of the organization to force her to pay me back for the rent. So yeah, the post ends there, but I feel like OP was dealing with a professional moocher for sure, guys. Someone who doesn't care about anybody else but themselves, who just goes around with a sad tale hustling people for money. Honestly, I hope it's not a mother-daughter duo that's doing this. And if you're listening to this wondering why the heck OP was so dumb and naive to give someone this much money without knowing them, let me tell you a personal story, guys, where I got friggin' scammed. Tales of the fluff, if you may call it. So I'll never forget this night, guys. I was at like a Wendy's like 10 years ago, late night, like 10:30 at night, and there was a guy standing outside with a dog tied up right beside him. So the guy proceeds to tell me the story that he was new in town, came for work, had his truck towed and impounded, and that him and his dog had no place to stay, and they both haven't eaten for 3 days. You know, the craziest sob story I've ever heard, like the saddest one. So I looked at this pup and I was like, oh my freaking gosh, you poor thing. So I take the guy inside Wendy's, let him buy whatever he wants. I spent like $30 on him, which at the time as a broke college student was a lot of money. So while he was ordering, I asked him what his dog needed to eat. Like, I was more concerned for the dog. A dog that hasn't eaten in 3 days totally breaks my heart, guys. So the guy ends up picking like 2 bacon cheeseburgers for the dog, right? Something to fill its stomach. So I pay, the guy sits down to eat, thanks me profusely, and I walk outside, right? And then I see this woman untying the dog, and I was like, I was mad. I was like, hey, what are you doing? Why are you stealing this dog? And the woman was like, oh, it's my dog. And I'm like, no, it belongs to that man that's inside the store. So guess what, guys? The woman unlocks her phone and like shows me a wallpaper on her phone, and it's her and that dog. And in that moment, I couldn't even describe what I felt, like immense rage, right? So I just laughed. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to go inside and like confront the guy while he's eating, right? And call him a piece of crap. So I just left it. I cut my losses, guys. But guess what? 2 weeks later, my friend and I are in the area around that Wendy's, and it was a Home Depot parking lot. And guess who's there walking up to my friend's car with me inside giving me the same sob story. And I just lost it, guys. I was like, hey, do you remember me? And he's like, no, I've never seen you before. And I'm like, you mother effer, you lying son of an effing, all the cuss words ever. I bought food for you and your pretend dog, you idiot. Get the F away from us, you piece of crap. I'm calling the police right now. Just throwing every swear word in the book at this guy, like trying to hurt him. And he's like, I'm sorry, man, I was hungry. And he just walks off. And to this day, I don't know if he's still doing it, but like, I'm still mad thinking about it sometimes. But like, I don't feel mad about spending $30 on him because he clearly needed it. I was mad at myself for falling for this because, there was a cute dog there and he used that dog on me, guys. Like, if the dog wasn't there, believe me, I would have said, sorry, man, I have like 25 cents in my pocket if you want. But I wanted that dog fed. It broke my heart, like I said. So yeah, if you're wondering how people get scammed by idiots like this to give them money, it really catches you off guard. Some people know exactly what to say, what emotions to portray to lure their victims, and they'll use dogs that aren't theirs. So yeah, that was the one time Fluffy Boy got had. So that's my talk, guys. Thanks for coming. And while we're on the topic of moochers, listen to this next one. So this isn't my story, but literally just happened to my roommate. And it's one of the craziest things that I've ever witnessed. My roommate usually gets Mondays and Tuesdays off, so it's kind of like his weekend right now. And he chose to go on a bender, and him being a dumb drunk lost his wallet walking home from the liquor store. Later on, I get a knock at the door, and it's a lady holding his ID, asking if I know him. I'm like, yeah, that's my roommate, and I go knock on his door to get him. My roommate comes out, and the guy didn't even know he lost his wallet. He's of course ecstatic, saying thank you so much and all that stuff. She then asked if she could talk to him for a second, so they go outside and they do their thing. When he comes back in, I asked him what that was all about. And apparently, she went through his wallet and she noticed that he gets food stamps. She then called the number on the back of the card to check the balance, and she knows he has money on it. She then proceeds to tell him that she's a single mom, and since she found his wallet and she knows how much money he has on it, he should buy her some groceries. The woman was trying to extort him right there on the spot. Of course, it's an awkward situation because she just found his wallet, but who does this? So yeah, he agreed, and now he's on his way with her to the store to buy her groceries. Edit: you don't need a PIN to check the balance, at least here in Nevada. You just dial the number on the back of the card, and then when prompted, type in the 16-digit number on the front of the card, and it will give you the full balance. Yeah guys, so if I were in OP's roommate's shoes, I would have just thanked her for returning my wallet and said to her face, yeah, I'm sorry, I need every cent from my 6 kids. Because I don't want them to starve. Like, how the heck is she gonna know I don't have 6 kids? So OP comes back to the comments to say, so the damage is done. He let her go on a $75 shopping spree on his card. He went with her and technically bought the groceries, but yeah, you get the point. Yeah, I'm shaking my head at both people, guys. Like, whatever happened to the good humans out there? Like, it seems like nowadays, everyone is always wanting something for something, right? Okay, so I'm a big girl. I don't sugarcoat it. I'm also not a fatvocate because I don't believe if you're morbidly obese, you should get special treatment. But I also don't fat shame people except myself either. I just exist in the fat world and I don't care about losing weight. So in August of 2021, I was in a horrible car accident where I dislocated and shattered my hip bone. I was wheelchair bound for 3 months and I had crutches for 2 more. So while being wheelchair bound, I had to use electric wheelchairs for grocery shopping, and my siblings helped me a lot too, but I would always bring my home wheelchair just in case someone needed this wheelchair more. The thing is, sometimes I would get people who thought I was lazy because I'm on the bigger side and I don't look injured, unless I wore shorts, which allowed you to see the scars and stitches, so I understand. One day in September, I was rolling around in the scooter, and a lady comes up to me saying, "Hey, you know being lazy like this will not only hurt you, but other people. You should be letting the elderly use this." I say to her, "Oh, I apologize, but actually She doesn't even let me finish. She says, "You don't have some disorder that makes you this fat. My daughter's a nurse. She would know." At that I say, "Ma'am, I completely agree. She interrupts me again and says, "I don't care what your excuse is. I'm elderly, so I need it more." I decide just to shut up and pull my pants a little to show the stitches. And that's when she says, "You pervert." I tell her, "Ma'am, I'm broken. I was in a car accident, so please F off." I start to roll away. And that's when she stands in front of me, demanding the electric cart. I tell her off again, and she comes back around to the side to start pulling my arm, trying to get me out of the wheelchair. With this, my hip starts hurting pretty badly. And that's when security walks up and says pretty much to let her have it and that I don't need it, without even asking questions. At this point, I was just annoyed and said, "Fine, let me call my sister to bring my wheelchair." The security guard said that's fine, but I have to get out of the chair to wait. I then decide to explain the same thing, and the guy didn't believe me until I showed him the stitches. He then turns to the lady and said that I probably need it for now and that he would get her one, but she wanted the one that I was sitting in. The woman then gets enraged and says she's faking it, and she starts trying to push me, trying to shove me out of the chair again, hurting me so much. I finally decide to call the cops and tell them that there's a crazy lady who was hurting me and that I feared for my safety. The security guard was now holding the lady, and I waited for the police, and she was fighting. The cops ended up coming, and they held the lady down, and she was screaming everything in the book: assault, police brutality, etc. I gave them my statement and ID, and they called for backup because the lady was now hitting the cops, and they couldn't hold her down. Another cop showed up, and in the end, the lady was arrested, and I was let go. I took some pain meds and went on shopping. Yeah, all I can say is I'm glad the cops arrested her, guys. I don't understand how some people feel the need to police electric carts provided in stores, or even personal wheelchairs for that matter. Like the amount of stories I read where Karens are like, "Get out of the wheelchair, you don't look like you need it," is absurd. Like anytime I see a person in a wheelchair, I assume they need it. Like not everyone is just joyriding a frickin' wheelchair Karen. And as for that security guard, he's an idiot, all I can say. So I want to preface this by saying that I work in a retail outlet. For those who don't know what that is, it's basically an outside mall. Anyways, the parking where I work is always hell. It's neck for a good parking spot. And on busy days like today, I usually avoid parking disputes and park in the parking garage, which is pretty far away from my job. On my lunch break when it slowed down, I decide to go move my car and park it in front of the store that I work at. So I get a parking spot and start to enjoy my break and call my significant other. After hanging up with my significant other, the parking space in front of me opens up as an SUV leaves, so I pull into that spot. When I pull in, I guess there was a car sitting and waiting to take that spot. Now I hadn't originally seen it due to the fact that the SUV blocked it, so when I pulled forward, the lady in the car goes completely insane, screaming that I need to move my car. She told me that what I was doing was illegal and so on and so forth. So being a little petty, I stand my ground and refuse to move. Now, if the lady had been nice and she asked me to move nicely, I would have had no problem doing so. But instead, she decided to go insane and scream at me, so I stood my ground. Not to mention that there was like 5 open parking spots around me that she could have easily taken, including the one that I just pulled out of. At this point, I tried to ignore her, hoping she'd simply give up and leave, but boy was I wrong. She approaches my car, screaming at me through my window, demanding I move, and insisting what I was doing was illegal, and that she's calling the cops right now. Again, I was ignoring her, hoping she'd give up, leave, and take another one of the 5 or so parking spots around me. and at one point, I roll the window down to ask her to leave me alone or I'll contact police. At that, she tells me F you, and to call the police because she didn't give a flying fudge since what I was doing was illegal. As I'm waiting for her to stop, she starts banging on my car window once again, screaming at me and threatening to put her hands on me. As I continue to ignore her, she goes around to the passenger side of my car and she actually opens my door, screaming and threatening me. At that point, I just pulled out my phone and contacted the police out of fear of what this crazy woman would do to me. When she sees that I'm actually calling the police, she gets inside her car and leaves, but not quick enough for me to not get her license plate. The police finally show up and I give them the rundown. As I'm talking to the police, the lady shows up again and the other officer goes to talk to her. I told the police that I want to press charges, and he tells me that even though I could, it likely won't get pushed through considering that this was a minor dispute and I didn't have any proof, which I was upset about. But as I continue talking to the officer, this wonderful lady approaches us and lets the officer know that she witnessed the lady try to enter my car. The officer says that I have more of a ground to press charges at this point, so I decide to do so. I don't speak to the lady again, but she really dug her own grave by coming back because even with a license plate number, they can't prove it was the woman. Silly Karens don't know when to quit, right guys? Like, I don't know what the heck the woman was thinking coming back. And I'm not gonna lie, I would be mad too if I was waiting for a parking spot and someone stole it. But I'm not the type to get out of my car and harass someone over it and call it illegal. When I was 18 years old, I got really sick. I had to leave school because there were some days I couldn't even get up to get water and needed help, while many other days I was fine. After a slew of doctors, tests, hospital scans, etc., we were told by the oncologist that he thought it was likely lymphoma. There were a lot more tests after that, mainly to try to rule out everything else. It was a pretty scary time. And just to be clear, I did not end up having cancer, but we went months thinking that it was probably cancer, and I was getting test after test, ruling out many other possibilities. It was weird rooting for a positive test result on the other test, because between that and cancer was the worst option. So for the story, my family had different ways of dealing with the news. Some acted like I was on my deathbed, while others pretended it wasn't happening, but all were supportive. Well, almost everybody. I have two aunts on my mom's side. One lives in Florida, runs her own law firm, and has many personal commitments. She offered to drop all that, buy a plane ticket, and fly to Virginia just to hang out if I wanted. Now, I would never ask her to, but the offer meant so much to me. She constantly asked for updates from my mom, asked me how I was doing, just overall caring. My other aunt lived 5 minutes from me. In my lifetime, she's never had a job. She's literally got nothing going on in her life. That woman's always the selfish, crazy, narcissist that we all put up with. And I can't stretch how awful and crazy she is. Almost everything she says is a lie. Some she knows are lies, and some she's deluded herself into believing. From the second you see her to the second you finally make up an excuse to get her to leave, she's whining about being in pain, a new injury, a crazy illness, etc. Her ailments are 90% in her head and self-diagnosed. She never lets anyone get a word in, and if someone tries, she just starts yelling to drown them out. We always invite her for every holiday dinner. I had been at home sick for weeks at this point, and she's never once reached out to me, never once asked my mom how I was doing or how she was dealing with it in any conversation they had. Now, I thought she didn't care, but I was wrong. She very much cared about the situation. She was pissed. So she comes in on that day glaring at me. She was clearly angry from the moment she walked in. Now, at first, I didn't understand why. But before dinner, my mom started mentioning something about an upcoming doctor's appointment. And before she could finish, my aunt interrupts with, "Speaking of doctor's appointments," and then she went on listing doctors that she sees for her various issues. That went on all dinner. She made dinner all about herself. Her doctor apparently said that her spine was more injured than anyone else he's ever seen, which was a lie. She says she can barely walk because of problems in her legs, which is another lie. And she says she's in agony in every part of her body, each being a different issue. That was a lie. And lastly, she claimed she had disease after disease. She always complained about these things, but in between other complaints and crazy stories. That day, it was all about medical issues. She said she had to see way more doctors than me, she had to have way more tests than me, and they were so much worse than my cancer. She hated the idea of the attention I was getting because of my cancer scare. My mom mentioned one thing about it the whole night, and I never talked to my aunt about it at any point. The attention was a couple of my relatives mentioning it to her on a phone call a couple of times, but no one was asking about her disease of the month. no one was updating my grandma about her next doctor's appointment, and she couldn't stand it. So the icing on the cake is when she looked at me, she told me, "You know, you're so lucky you don't have to live like me. I live in so much pain and I'm so sick." And I'm thinking, I might have serious cancer here, lady. I didn't even know how to respond to that. The woman could look me in the eye and tell me that I was lucky because she had it so much worse, that I only had to worry about cancer. Like, the fact she was making up a random sickness for attention and still had the gall to say it was even worse. When we got the biopsy results back, she didn't ask what they were. It was later relayed to me that when my mom told her, my aunt responded with, "I know, she was never really sick and you were all worried and worked up about it. I have real issues, so I would know." I have a million examples of her being entitled and selfish, but this one really stood out to me. Yeah, so talk about crazy family members, guys. Like, the nerve of that woman to say that her fake ailments were way worse than OP's cancer is horrible. Like, my jaw is still on the floor, guys, but I'm not surprised. Some people really do believe that the world is all about me, me, me. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /entitled people. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. I hope you didn't shake your heads too hard. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy Karen stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/petty revenge, where a Karen manager won't stop harassing OP because she thinks she's invincible. Guys, go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.